Hello, listeners. It is Monday night once again. And of course, it is time for us to discuss all the English and Italian football action. Yes, I do have a big old smile on my face. What a weekend. One of us might not, but we'll get there. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, please follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. My name is Rory, and I am joined by the two guys above me.
Adam and
Andy.
Here we are, boys. How are we doing? How were your weekends, Adam? How was your weekend?
Yeah, really good. Kind of reminisce just offline about some classic Twitter that I've been catching up on. So that was classic conspiracy theories that no one wants to say. So just to give the listener and those viewing a gist, it's kind of like Eder has only scored one goal in his career, and that was the goal that helped Portugal win the Euro 2018, I think it was. But yes, loads of little conspiracies like that made me smile over the weekend, including some of the results, which we'll dig into in short time. So how is Andy, more importantly?
I mean, up until Sunday afternoon, that was actually quite a good mood. The weekend's football. I was even feeling optimistic on Sunday morning, and
we all saw the tweet. Don't worry, we all saw the tweet.
Yeah. No, to be fair, that's genuinely how I felt at the time. Stand by that. But yeah, obviously, as we'll go into a bit later, it appears my optimism was mildly displaced.
It lasted all of 5 minutes, but before we get there,
to be honest, but yeah,
they are terrifying. They are absolutely terrifying, and it's the one thing that, like, as excited as I'm getting every time I watch Man City, I'm like, don't bother. Just don't bother. No one's gonna get even close to them. But we're gonna start this week by talking about Serie A, and there was some really, I think, some big matches, some good matches. I don't know where we want to start. Should we start with the fact that Juve actually learned to attack? 3 goals in a game.
It was probably helped by Bologna. It was helped by Bologna, right? They were just terrible.
Helped by Bologna. I really did expect more. And I was looking at the table after the game, and I was like, I thought they'd had a better start to the season than they have. They actually only have one win. They got a few draws, so they're not losing many, but I thought they'd been doing better than they were. They did not put up a fight against Juve. It was super comfortable. Juve didn't even really have to try. Adam, what did you make of it? And then we can go to Milik's wonder goal, right?
Yeah, Bologna just didn't really offer much, it has to be said. I thought this was Skorupski's opportunity to kind of show his worth, because he was talking about it midweek about how he feels he should be more considered for the national side. And on that basis, obviously, I'm sure Polish manager Mikniewicz is looking at Wojciech Szczesny at the other end thinking, yeah, he's the one that I'm going to have as my number one, which is unfortunate news for me because I know he's got a clanger in him. But regardless of that, Arnautovic was not to be seen. Just terrible attacks, to be fair, from Bologna. They did kind of put a bit more fight in the second half, but by that point, it was pretty much game, set and match by that point. And let's move on to these goals then. You know, Milik, incredible volley. To be fair, you have to say that was the most positive performance Juventus fans have probably seen to what was a very empty stadium. I'm
not sure how many of them saw it, but some of them saw it. Yeah. Andy, what did you make of it? We've been kind of telling you how negative Juve are. What did you make of the performance?
But yeah, they seemed to. I think they needed that result, and I think they had rather accommodating opponents. It's fair to say. I think even with the way Allegri plays, which we've all established is pretty boring, but at the end of the day, if you give good players space, they will punish you. I felt like Kostic made a lot of progress on the left-hand side. Tried a little finish from him, to be fair.
He could be a great signing for that.
Yeah, I mean, Kostic, I saw Kostic Frankfurt last year, and he seems to have this sort of same finish that he does, where he opens up his body and then just you kind of you know where he's going to put it. He tells you where he's going to put it, and then still slots it in anyway. Nice little move that he's picked up from his time in Germany, and he's obviously carried it over here. So yeah, I think it takes the pressure off a tiny bit for Allegri, because I think we were talking last week, bloody Marco Arnautovic gets a hat trick or something like that.
I could just see him with his ear at the Allianz. I could just see it in my head.
It was a possibility. Yeah. So, in reality, I mean, they've started poorly, but they've only lost one in 8 games. They're only 4 points away from the top 4, which, I guess, and it's still a long way to go in the season. So, although it's all a bit doom and gloom at the moment for Allegri, there is still more than enough time in the season for that to improve. And I think for the sake of Juve's accountants, they'll probably hope that things pick up from there one way.
They make it up as they go along, don't worry.
True, yeah. Almost as bad as Barcelona's accountants, aren't they?
Well, for Allegri, I think you're right. This is a huge win because they've kind of got a run of games now. They've got Maccabi Haifa next in the Champions League, which at home they have to win. But then they've got Milan away, Maccabi Haifa away, which I don't think is an easy game. And then they've got the Turin Derby. Now, obviously, it's a derby in name only. Torino never win that game, but it's still a big game, right? So I feel like there's a run of games here where Allegri could potentially struggle. I think this 3 points is huge for him. But there was a player that stood out to me, and I'm just going to see how much I can rattle Juve fans, because all I see is them slag him off. But every time I see him play, he's one of their biggest goal threats, Weston McKennie. In the first half, he had 2 or 3 opportunities that he should have scored, could have scored. But I think as a midfielder, it probably says quite a lot about their midfield. He's one of the more dynamic midfielders that they have. Am I wrong, or do you think he gets a bit of a rough time at Juve?
No, I think he gets a bit of a rough time, to be fair, because I've seen him in European games. He has, and even back when he was at Schalke, he has got a goal in him, to be fair. He is quite good at doing the whole box-to-box kind of role. I think he probably gets a lot of stick, maybe because, I don't know, maybe he's American, he's not that technical, and, maybe
I think people are still unsure what type of player he is fully.
He's not your typical Italian midfielder, is he? He's very sort of, I dare say, quite British in his style of play. Maybe that just jars with some people, but I think he's a very serviceable player. He is somebody that would give you, especially compared to some of the other individuals, Rabiot. He won't give you any shit. He'll give you 100% every game. And I think, availability, generally speaking, is king. So I think the manager obviously trusts him because he knows what you get with him.
Yeah, I just think I had him in fantasy maybe last year or the year before, and he popped up with a lot of goals. I thought, I don't get why they hate him. Maybe they just will never forgive him for putting ranch dressing on pizza. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. But I thought he had a pretty good first half. I thought he played really well, and I thought there is a player there. If we could just find out what type of midfielder he is, maybe there is an actual player there. But yeah, a much better performance for Juve, but definitely not the biggest game of the weekend. Definitely not. I think it has to be Inter losing again to Roma while Mourinho was sat in a truck having to watch it and streaming it all on Instagram. I'm sure we've all seen the story. It is fantastic. But what a performance from Roma, and what a performance from Inter. I watched it with friend of the show now, Tommy. He was super happy first half, not so much second half, as Inter definitely lost interest. I am going to give my thoughts, but I'm going to go to you, Adam, first. I'm going to go to Andy. What are your reflections from this game? Did Roma deserve it?
Yeah, I think they did. But let's just talk about Inzaghi for a second. This is the worst start that Inter have had since a certain Gasperini was in charge of Inter, and we know what happened then. So, yeah, it's on the cards, isn't it? It does feel like at the moment Inzaghi is probably going to be pushed out, and he's not got it easy if you look at the run-in, because they've got midweek against Barcelona that they need to win, and then on Saturday they play a team that they don't get much luck when it comes to league matches, and that's Sassuolo. Sassuolo in good form after that 5-0 win against Salernitana. But yeah, let's talk about Chris Mordini as well. Incredible performance. It has to be said, Roma weren't very good in the first half. I thought Chanaloglu was unlucky. Dzeko was just offside.
That was
Yeah.
bloody close. Yeah.
But one comment I've got to ask both of you, Handanovic, and I just noticed it
I
because
was going to say Handanovic.
why does he dive backwards? I don't know what. I know he's geriatric.
Straight at him.
It just reminds me of. Do you remember the Nike advert where the demons, where the ball goes through and gets the goal
through his chest?
That's what it feels like with that effort. It was incredible by Dybala as well. But Handanovic, for some reason, I don't know what it is, and I'm thinking like from a goalkeeper's point of view, you're always kind of trying to push it out rather than kind of like he just absorbs the ball and goes into the net. So I just don't get that. But Inter.
I've said it before.
Trouble.
His wrists are made of cheese string. He has zero strength in his wrists. And I think Dybala shared that video. I think you retweeted it on the page with him like pointing at the screen, right? And I was like, yeah, Dybala, it was a great hit, but you owe half of your goal bonus to Handanovic because that should have been saved. Like that definitely should have been saved. For Inter, you're right. First half, I think they were the better team. And I thought, Roma just haven't turned up. It's another game where they've got a big opportunity and they've just classic Roma, just not showing up, bottling it. And then second half, something changed and Inter were absolutely terrible. I think the players that people were shouting their names of the most while we were watching it in the pub was people are kind of sick of Barella. He's having a really, really bad season. You can't fault his effort. You can't fault many things about that guy, but he is not having a good season. Skriniar, I don't know what was wrong with some of his positioning. Some of the positions he found himself in, even for one of the goals, I think he was like on the wrong side or like just 5 yards away from the player.
It was Smaldini's header. For some reason, he's just so far behind the play. It's just incredible. And that's not only just this match. It's been a few matches now where he's just off the pace. And
it's incredible for a defender that has been like consistently one of the best centre backs in Serie A. Like it's been unbelievable. He just does not look on it at all. Handanovic, obviously, people were just screaming like we've got a keeper on the bench who is ready to come in, who is like miles better than this guy. Better. Like they understand that like the position that Handanovic holds in the changing room, and he's a club legend, etc., etc. But it's time to move on. I think this could be the hill that Inzaghi ultimately dies on. Is if he doesn't replace Handanovic with Onana. I think the fact that Lukaku's been unfit. Players like Çalhanoğlu, he looked decent first half, very much lost interest. I think just lots of the players, you can just see that maybe they just stopped listening to Inzaghi, or just the amount of effort that they put in last year and under Conte is just not there. Too much. One player who I was impressed with was Aslani. I thought he actually played very well first half. I thought this is what we need to see. But I don't know about you, Andy. What stood out to you we can praise Roma, but what stood up to you about Inter's performance?
I think in the first half they attacked with a lot of intent, a lot of purpose, finding those spaces on there. I think DeMarco especially, you saw it on international duty as well, really adds a lot of thrust. And I think they're just lacking a clinical edge at the moment, as you say, with Lukaku's fitness issues, and they've quite a few big names from top to bottom of the pitch. Their spine that serves so well, that tight challenge of Skriniar, Lukaku, Barella. They're all kind of having a collective fail at the moment. And I think, as you say, Handanovic. I mean, oh man. You'd be fuming if you watch the Crew Alexandra, right, and you saw your keeper doing that. You'd be livid. I'd
be fuming.
Let alone in a Serie A game for one of those. And I think you guys have obviously watched much more of Handanovic than I have, but I looked at that before the pod. I was like, what are you doing? All you have to do is just stay where you are and do that. So it must be frustrating. But, whilst we're on the subject of slating keepers, I thought Rui Patricio could have done a little bit better. Let's be honest.
That's very true.
I looked at that replay a few times and thought, that's a fucking P roll. You've
Yeah.
got to be. I know he's a bit old, but you got to be diving to your right a bit quicker than he did, because he just kind of went down in installments, like a reverse IKEA flat pack. And I thought he was a little bit poor with that one. But yeah, I guess you also got to talk about obviously Mordini as well. I think it's time to bite the. I think Gareth might be time for Gareth and to bite the bullet. And
there are definitely worse English centre backs out there, and I feel like
there's quite a lot of
I feel like Smalling has actually, the career he's had at Roma has been incredible. Like since he turned up to Roma, he definitely. I feel like the first season maybe he was a little bit shaky, or there was one season where people were like, "Oh God, he was out of form," but he's managed to turn himself into a key player for this Roma team. I think he obviously loves playing for Mourinho.
And I think that's the Mourinho factor. It seems to be working in Italy again, because he seems to work his magic again. Because another one who looks happy now is Dybala. I think it felt like at Juve. I think towards the end of his time at Juve, I think part of the reason why he left, I think, is perhaps he didn't quite feel the love. He didn't really feel particularly wanted, because he's being offered out every summer.
He's publicly calling out Nedved on the pitch, like staring at him as he scored. Like he made no secret.
There was obviously a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. They're trying to flog him off to. They tried to flog him off to Man United at one point, and he, fair to say, resisted that one quite strenuously. But now I think he's found a club where he's wanted. I think Roma. I didn't expect him to end up at Roma. At the start of the window, I think a lot of people expected him to go abroad, and I think he could be. I think he's that X factor between, what would be finishing from the Europa League into the Champions League, and maybe something more. But I think in this second Mourinho season, I think they have to be aiming for the Champions League. Whether they get there or not, I don't know. But there does certainly seem to be a bit more belief about them. Roma have played some tough games already, so they've played Atalanta. They've played Juve already. They've had a lot of tough games, so and
they're still up there. But I think with Dybala, you're right. He gives them the option that means they won't have to rely on Tammy Abraham so much,
and he's been a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So when he's not in form, they have another option, and then they can wait for Tammy to play himself back in form. He came on. I thought he did okay when he came on towards the end, Tammy Abraham. But I think the player that I need to talk about is just Pellegrini, man. What a player. What a player. I just absolutely love him as a player. I think we've talked about him before. He's just so complete. And such a creative key for this Roma team. I thought he had another fantastic game. And seeing Spinazzola get an assist, I love to see Spinazzola doing well. If we can get him back to the Euros Spinazzola, he could be a hell of a player. We just hope we can keep the fitness levels up. But I thought Roma, unbelievable performance. Like we said in the previous pod, they've not won at the San Siro since 2014 or something. It was like 8 years ago, right? I think it was. So huge win. And I saw again, Adam, on the Twitter, I think you're kind of joining the club of like falling in love with Mourinho now he's in Italy, right? I'm obsessed with the guy now.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? Just even his actions just in that bus, just like lapping it all up. But I think we're starting to see the other side of like Mourinho, where he's just like an old dog, where you're just like, you love him, don't you? Really, despite all the niggly little things he gets up to, you still love him. But he's a joy. He's an absolute joy, and I think he's found a club that actually even the fan base love him. Because he's given them hope, and that's the thing that they've been craving, someone to lead them, as Andy kind of says, to that top four. I think that by the end of the season, top four is realistic. It's then how can he push them up further? And I think he's the right man, because he'll attract the right players as well. He's got the contacts, people trust him. And I feel for Tammy Abraham. I just think one goal, once he gets that one goal, then the rest will start falling. So, I'm really optimistic with this Roma side. You do have to say, though, like with every Mourinho side, there's always that one team they'll always lose and fuck up. So let's wait and see. But very good result for Roma.
I think it's huge result. And I think especially with Serie A looking so open this year. I think it could be a kind of like Roma, if they just get those results together, it could be a huge season. But we're going to go to the team that are still leading the table. And Kvaradona, not only does he have a similar surname, a similar nickname, he now has joined the Maradona club in having murals of him painted in Quartiere Spagnoli in Naples. The first Kvaradona mural is up. What a goal he scored once again. This guy, do we think he's is he Capocannoniere material at this point? I don't know. At first, I thought he was just going to be getting assists, typical winger. Now he's doing this striker-winger hybrid. This guy, do you think he could get Capocannoniere?
I mean, very possible, isn't it? It's very possible for him to be by the end of the season. I don't know how you stop him. That's the real answer. Like, how do you stop him? Because, like we've said in the first few games, he can do both feet. He can assist. He can score goals. He's got the all-round game. Like, I'm just so interested to see how he does it against the bigger sides now. I just think the stage is set. He had his first taste against Milan. Bit of a, so-so match for him. But that said, I think the style didn't suit him in terms of tactics that Napoli deployed on that particular match. So, I'm thinking Champions League, obviously, it looks like quite favourable that they'll get past this group stage. I'm looking forward to when they play the big games. And obviously, tomorrow night, they've got a very good, tasty game against Ajax as well. So that could be a very good showing for his abilities. But then again, I just think there's so much to get out of this kid. He just seems unstoppable at the moment. What about you, Rory?
I'm absolutely obsessed with him. I think that his ability to shoot off both feet, it just keeps him so unpredictable, so hard to mark. So the typical thing, like show him outside, show him inside, it doesn't matter. He will just ping it at some point. And I think we've talked about it before. I think Napoli have got some of the best business in Europe there, if not the best transfer in Europe. It is just incredible how cheaply they got him and how incredible this guy is. He is absolutely pushing that team forward, but I'm going to take a little bit of credit for the guy who got the brace because I've been bigging him up all season.
I guess so, yeah.
Since he joined Napoli, I said, this guy is the most complete midfielder in the league. And Guisa with 2 goals. If he starts adding goals to his game as well, Jesus, I don't know what you think of him, man. Do you remember him playing from Fulham? Have you seen much of him at Naples?
He was there for like a couple of years in Fulham, wasn't he? And he's a completely different player. In Serie A for them, but he's added a bit more. I think he still feels more emboldened. I think when you're playing in a team which has got more of the ball and encouraged to attack, I think you see the best out of him. Where maybe in England, because he was essentially playing for some woefully shit Fulham teams, that you probably weren't going to get the best out of him when he's having to track back and. Especially under Scott Parker, the whole 10 men behind the ball, and I think we're starting to realise that wasn't really his game. There's a lot more dynamism, and especially for his second goal as well. That is just a man who's confident, just to essentially take it all the way, lever it at short distance, and he just looks fully in control of what he was doing. So I think it's along with Smalling and Lookman, I think Serie A seems to be turning into a bit of a rehabilitation home for mid-league Premier League players who've sort of lost their way a little bit.
There's been a few of them, and Mkhitaryan's still in there, still lost in there somewhere.
I still forget Mkhitaryan exists. I feel sorry for him because he left United because of Jose.
Well, I think that this Napoli team now just seems so much more rounded than last year. I think we've kind of briefly talked about it, but the fact they lost their captain, they lost like some huge players, Koulibaly, etc., but somehow they've come out of it with the squad just looking so much more kind of assured of itself and so much more settled. Spalletti, he guarantees you top 4. Every year he will get you top 4. That's what he does. I would love to see Spalletti get his first Scudetto, and this is his chance. As we've said, I don't know what you think, Adam, but the title race is so open this year. Atalanta still massively in it. Is this Spalletti's chance?
I hope so. We've been saying it last season.
Yeah, we said it last year as well.
We said it last season. The one thing I will say, this feels a lot more balanced in terms of a squad. So the fact that we're not even talking about Osimhen, who was a focal point for last season. Can you imagine when he comes back into that side? I think he's struggling to get into that side right now because you don't want to ruin that balance. Raspadori's just got form, for example. And, Zielinski's still there, for example. I mean, it just feels like a complete side at the moment, even defensively, where I thought that might be the issues. I mean, Kim's just come into it and just looks like, you don't have to worry about Mario Rui as well, for example, the assist for Anguissa for the first one. Incredible cross. Like you wouldn't expect him to do his masquerading runs, but he did. And I think that kind of sums up the feeling that there's a confidence there at the moment. And that's something that unless they have a combination of bad defeats or maybe an injury run, it's going to be hard to kind of defeat that. I think the big thing will be is can they maintain it for at least three quarters of this season? That's the big thing, because I think they're going to have to prioritize something at the end of the day. Is it going to be Champions League or is it going to be the Scudetto? I think this is where obviously it depends on who they play and what's available to them. But it's definitely promising signs. That's for sure.
They've got a interesting run of games coming up. So they've got, obviously you said they got Ajax midweek, Cremonese away, who are still looking for their first win. Then they've got Bologna. Roma away is a big test. Roma's going to be a big test. I've checked. They don't play Juventus until the 15th of January. So that's the day it all collapses. That's the day it collapses. But yeah, they've got some massively winnable games coming up. And I'm just enjoying the football they play. I think they've been the most entertaining team in Italy to watch for a while. And that's definitely not ending yet. But before we leave Serie A, we need to talk about one more team because they're still up there. And we think we've got them back. Atalanta 1, Fiorentina 0. It wasn't a great game. But Atalanta get the win. Andy, what did you think of this game?
Yeah, it wasn't the most massively entertaining game you'll see in your life. I thought, and obviously the funniest fun stat this season is that Atalanta have not trailed at any point at all this season, which is 8 games in. It's really fucking impressive. So it shows the depth and quality that they've got in defence at the moment. I mean, you've got obviously you've got Demiral, who's probably the more senior centre back. Again, probably somebody who probably nowadays walks into the Juventus lineup with Chiellini having gone away. So I think that's a bit of a loss in Juve's part. And then you've got Scalvini, who's 18 years old, and Okori, who's spent a couple of years on loan, who's come back, getting some starts in there. So I think it's a good mix of youth and experience, and they've clearly got an understanding between each other. And they were missing, Atalanta were missing a few players as well. Obviously, they had their second choice, Sportiello, in goal. I think it's very fair to say that you can see why his second choice.
Both the goalkeepers in this game were terrible.
It was. I thought Sportiello got away with it a couple of times. I think Zappanora had a couple of sighters. I think he looked like Zappanora. I know he's prone to having a bit of a dig from range anyway, but it felt like he kind of knew the keeper was a bit ropey. And, there was one where he hit it and he just kind of, Sportiello just bundled over it, didn't really collect it. And if somebody was a little bit quicker off the mark there, maybe it's a sign of where Fiorentina's confidence is that somebody could have got on the top of that. A better team with better strikers would have got on top of that and scored. I think Demiral got himself an own goal as well.
He absolutely walloped that as well.
Yeah, I was a bit like, that wasn't over. That was a little bit too close. I'm sure he meant it. It's fine.
Bit of overconfidence.
all under control. Yeah, it's one of those like a right donut if that goes in, because the keeper was going the other way, so he won't get anywhere near it. But yeah, I think
you kind of hit on something there with the fact that like when Sportiello spilt it, Fiorentina were unable to take advantage, and that's because they have zero attacking threat. Throughout this game, I was waiting for something to happen. I think they brought on Jovic towards the end, right? but it didn't really change
It's
anything.
not the same Jovic of a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
is it?
No, he's off the pace. He's off the pace, and that was one of the things I was going to pull out on this one. Whilst they have got the best possession stats in the league, they're neither clinical or defensively really good at the moment. That's the story of like Fiorentina's season. They're just like, you contrast it to Atalanta, who we kind of associate as being the best attacking, outgoing, counter-attacking side. They've got the best defensive record in the league. Best joint clean sheets holders with Sassuolo of all teams that we would associate as having clean sheets. Definitely not
Consiglio
Sassuolo.
finally keeping clean sheets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you the story, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously worth mentioning Ademola Lookman as well.
Yeah.
I think we were talking just before we went live, and he's undergoing a bit of renaissance. So I think certainly compared to perhaps when he was in England, especially his most recent spells, expected to create more. But he's obviously been told to get in the box.
Yeah,
get in the
all
box.
you have to do.
Get on the end of things. And it was an easy goal, but it's the sort of thing I didn't used to see him do, which was just getting in that 6-yard box, taking a gamble, seeing the results, and scored a few goals for Leicester. Oh, my throat was going then. Scored a few goals for Leicester. So he's obviously getting a little bit of confidence. And I think the move to Italy is sort of suiting him well. And I thought it was also interesting, Gasparini's quote at the end. So he quoted about he likened where they are at the moment to the Giro Italia. He said, you don't know if you go to win the whole thing, but not many people get to wear it either, referring to the pink jersey. And I thought that's a nice...
Yeah,
nice
he's very good.
Nice analogy. Keeps the expectations where they should be, whilst acknowledging they're obviously having a good time where they are at the moment. And I think compared to the various difficulties they've had, last season
was a bad season. Last season was a bad season.
But I think they had quite a few injuries. Obviously, Ilicic is now he's retired now, hasn't he? Or we got let go.
Yeah. There's all sorts going on there.
But Muriel looks good. Looks good.
It's classic.
Muriel does in odd phases, doesn't he? He has a few months where he looks good, and then picks up a couple of injuries, looks shite for 18 months. You forget he exists and just pops back.
He does it in games. There was a point where he dribbled past like 4 players and just spammed it into the stand. And I was like, oh, God damn it. You were so good.
His controller broke.
But he looked super lively throughout the game. I think if they can get him fit and in form again, we all know about Duvan Zapata again, getting him fit and in form again. I just think for Gasparini, it's an incredible kind of recovery, because last year I think people like Atalanta are never going to sack him. They know that he's doing an incredible job there, but I think people started, including ourselves, to think, oh, is the magic running out there? Have we seen was the quarterfinals of the Champions League, was that the story? But it feels like they're kind of coming back a little bit. Great to see. I love so many of the players in that team. Koop Miners, Hatterborn, Malinovsky. There's so many players there that are glorious to watch. So another good win for them. Fiorentina, they'll be fine, but it's not going to be a fun season for them. It's just not going to be a fun season. I think this Europa League thing is kind of screwing them. The Thursdays playing a small squad, a fairly inexperienced manager. We like Italiano. He's a very good manager, but the first time for him managing a situation like this, I think Fiorentina will be fine, but it's not going to be a lot of fun in Florence, I don't think. Elsewhere, very quickly in Serie A, it seems like Monza have woken up, Adam. Monza, they're alive. What's happened?
Basically, we've got a manager that's giving them belief, allowing them to play a bit more. And I mean, you just have to look at the performances from the likes of Pessina, Sensi, who scored an incredible goal in this one, Ravella, who's on loan from Juventus, a player that should be playing for Juventus as opposed to Rabiot, as we've been talking about. But incredible performance by Monza. Unfortunately, bad news for Sampdoria. They are pretty much bottom of the league. They have been there last week anyway, but Marco Giampaolo has been sacked. It was inevitable. I was speaking to you guys offline. Harry Winks hasn't even started a game, which might kind of indicate maybe the hierarchy we're expecting him to play. There potentially is maybe some money involved in that. So I wonder if the next manager, whoever they bring in, suddenly plays Harry Winks, and then we'll work it out from there. But to be fair, Sampdoria are a poor side. They were lucky to stay up last season, and it looks like they're destined to go down into Serie B. So, yeah, unfortunately, bad news for Sampdoria, but good news for Monza. They're actually propping up the table now. They're coming up with some results and, yeah, looking a bit more promising, which will please certain Silvio and co, right?
He's going to have to pay for all those players if he stays up. He's going to have to actually pay for them all. That's the bills waiting at the end. But yeah, I think Monza are looking so much better. Sampdoria have had years of inaction. They've been so terrible and survived by the skin of their teeth so many times and just refuse to improve. And this is where it gets you eventually. It's just too much. It's too far, and you end up going down. Kind of reminds me of Newcastle under Mike Ashley. That kind of vibe of just like, if we can just scrape it, and then eventually you have to go. You have to go. A bad time for Genovese football, because it looks like Genoa are not going to come back up either. So a bad time to be a football fan in Genoa. But that is our Serie A review, I think. I'm going to quickly check through the games. Elsewhere, Milan beat Empoli 3-1 again. Rafa Leao scoring a beautiful chip. That guy. Sassuolo 5-0 against Salernitana. And tonight, we have Verona taking on Udinese. Lazio 4-0 against Spezia. They absolutely battered him in the first half. That was not even a contest. No. And the other one, Lecce Cremonese, 2 penalties. Like Andy said in the last episode, when 2 teams need a win, they both get a draw, right? That's what happens. 2 penalties, 1-1. The relegation fight lives on. But now we are going to go to the Premier League. Oh, what a weekend. It started off in the best possible way. Now, I need to quickly say that I was working Saturday morning. We had people coming in for tests, and there was a guy, it was 1 o'clock, right? Kick off at 1:30, and he was doing this test, and it was like 1:10 past 1. I was like, man, you need to hurry up. 1:15. I was like, you best finish that test now. 1:20. I just pulled it from under him, marked it out the door, managed to run into my house just as Thomas Partey hit the ball and it flew into the top corner. Now, I swore to myself that I wasn't going to celebrate if he scored for obvious reasons. I'm sorry, listeners, but I only have so much inner strength. I went absolutely mental as that ball hit the back of the net, and then felt very guilty about it, if that makes you feel better. But 3-1 winners for Arsenal. Before I go off on it, what a performance. We were saying it was huge. Andy, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I think Arsenal really stepped up. I mean, I said on our pod last week, I think I was getting to see Arsenal really, really step up in a big game, but they did. I think the best story out of that one was the reports that came out that Emerson Royale had invested £1 million, and it's just such a Tottenham Hotspur thing to do. He invests, he's obviously brought out that he spent £1 million on his personal development. I thought, that's great. Cryo chambers and fitness coaches, nutritionists. And you still got fucking play football. I guess
you must have skipped the lesson on, controlling your limbs.
Defensive positioning. Yeah, it's just fucking hilarious. But no, I think the makeup of that Arsenal midfield seems quite settled now. I think Xhaka's played the best football of his career at Arsenal. He's been wearing the captain's armband again recently, and let's be honest, that's not a situation I don't think any Arsenal fan would have seen coming a couple of years back. So I think Arteta's finally sort of got through to his more disciplined side. He's started to show that, more or less week in, week out, which you weren't seeing beforehand. And I think Saliba as well, he's really... I mean, it was a little bit ropey against United, but generally speaking, he's been fantastic.
He's honestly, I can't tell you how excited I am about that kid. I think we've got the next best centre-back in the world. I honestly think when he hits his peak, he reminds me of young Ferdinand. Every time I watch him, he just reminds me of Rio Ferdinand. His composure on the ball, his positioning, he's not scared of anything. He never panics. His passing range. He has come into the Premier League and looked... He's been one of the best centre-backs this year in the league. You can't deny it. And that is at the age of 21. It's unbelievable how good this guy is. I'm so excited about him. I think with Granit Xhaka, he's playing a completely different role now. With Partey, and I'm going to do a bit on Partey because I realise there's a huge fucking elephant in the room with that. But Like Xhaka's being played in a completely different role now. He's got that box-to-box role. He's being allowed to attack. We've wasted 6 years of his career playing him as a holding midfielder. He's not a holding midfielder. He's a box-to-box midfielder. That's what he is, and he's incredible. His redemption arc is insane. With Thomas Partey, I'm disgusted that he plays for the club. I really wish he would never play for the club again. It's difficult when it's not been found guilty, right? You can't talk about it. It's not in court. It's this whole thing of the club can't just sack him and be like, there's an accusation, so you're gone. It's this weird gray area where we just have to kind of live with it. But let's not pretend that there's not others in the league that people are also living with, right? Like he's not the only one. That's not to excuse it, but I've seen a lot of fans on Twitter this weekend giving Arsenal a disgusting club when their club has one or two players that have also been accused of it.
I think
they should all be taken out of the league, right? I just think it's a really difficult situation to be in.
Because you got Tottenham as well. They signed what's his face?
Basuma.
Yves Bissouma, in the knowledge that he was still under investigation at the time. And when they signed him, that situation, he obviously got wind of the fact it was going to be resolved. But again, like, should you be actively trying to sign a player who's got active accusations? Granted, that appears to have resolved itself, so maybe fair enough in the grand scheme of things. But obviously, United have got the Greenwood situation, which, to be fair, they've handled really well.
They handled it very well. To be fair.
The Ronaldo situation, less so. I just think it's the point I'm making is like all football fans are hypocrites at the end of the day. Everyone's hypocrites at the end of the day. I am enjoying the football that Thomas Partey is playing. He has been one of our best players this season. I just want people to know it makes me incredibly uncomfortable that he wears the Arsenal shirt, and I really, really wish he wasn't. But we could go away from him. Adam, I'm going to get your thoughts on the performance. What did you make of Tottenham? I would not want to be watching that football every week.
Yeah, it's terrible football at the moment. And I did mention, if you cast your kind of minds back to the Chelsea performance, that's basically what you saw in this match. In particular, I mean, it was just that final ball occasionally from Spurs. Like Son, for many of them, it was highlighted on Match of the Day, just like missed pass. And the other thing that was picked up was Richarlison and Son were kind of on the wing, so to speak. So they were expected to track back, but that's not part of their natural game. They're not going to do that kind of duty. But that said, also, Spurs defensively were terrible, absolutely terrible. Just no intensity, no like kind of pressing. It was just kind of like sit back, absorb it, which is to a degree, yes, it is Conte style, but you expect a bit more from the players. And I think when you sense what you see, the videos that are coming out now, Spurs fans being really optimistic going into this North London derby, you can understand why they probably felt like that way, because naturally the performance were indicating that they were going to be pressing and making sure this was going to be a tougher game for Arsenal. But I'm glad that I predicted Arsenal to win this because it was so inevitable. Unfortunately, just like Arsenal just looked the form side. They looked in control despite everything. Like even in those moments where obviously we're talking about Emerson Royale, I think a few years ago, you would have had David Luiz bombarding himself in and like getting sent off himself. So I think the fact is you've got a mature squad there. It's incredible performance by Arsenal, it has to be said, but yeah, Spurs absolutely terrible. And where do you go from this? Because it does kind of feel like, right, that's probably like a bit of a major doubt now for Spurs fans. Like, where do they go from here? Because you're thinking that they've got a better squad this time around. Don't know what your thoughts are. But
talking to Spurs fans, they were saying they've not played well this season at all. They've just got results. Like, there's not been one game where they've been like, we played well that game. So I think, like, it's interesting because this is obviously the same score or the same result as last year at the Emirates, but I feel like they're two completely different wins. In the one last season, for the last 10 minutes, we clinged on for dear life, and it, like, Aaron Ramsdale tipped one onto the crossbar. Like, it was, we by the skin of our teeth. We played well first half, but the second half we did not play well. This game, I think honestly, Spurs didn't get a sniff. I think there was 10 minutes towards the end of the first half where we gave away the penalty. Gabriel does worry me at the back at times. But there was a 10-minute period. But then even at the end of the second half, there was a chance right at the end for Gabriel Jesus. And we managed to wrestle control of the game back again. I think we've seen Arsenal's ability to manage games better. I feel like apart from the United game where I still insist we deserved a draw out of that. That game got out of our hands. We can see that we're better at managing games now. And before we move on to the United game, I just want to very, very quickly give a guy credit who it blows my mind he's not getting more credit. Ben White. He's playing right back, incredible. And he has now kept Zaha quiet. He's kept Son and Harry Kane quiet. He's like every game he's played incredibly well. His relationship with Saka, he's able to overlap. He's able to cut in, cover positions. I just think if that guy isn't in the England World Cup squad, it's a fucking travesty because he is in great form this year and he's just getting no credit. I also love that as he walked past what was left of the Tottenham fans, he gave it a cheeky little 3-1 as he left. And he gave Harry Kane a kick because Harry Kane is a snide little prick and he gets away with everything. There was a moment where he just booted Gabriel for no reason. Nobody says anything. He does it every game. And I do not understand how he gets away with this shit week in, week out. We do have to say he got his 100th away goal of 100th Premier League away goal, which is the first player to do that. I'm just trying to think the last time he scored and it wasn't a penalty. Anybody?
Pretty sure it was just for the international break.
It feels like he only scores penalties.
Yeah, against Leicester, I want to say. Leicester City.
Especially against us. Maybe we need to stop giving Spurs penalties, but all he does is score penalties against us.
I mean, there's nothing. There's still goals, aren't they? Like,
yeah, but I don't know.
I find this whole debate, like, it seems in the past couple of years, one of my pet hates in football, people have started categorizing penalty goals and non-penalty goals.
Yeah. It does make a difference.
It does make a difference. It doesn't, because there's some players who are absolutely shit at penalties. There's a reason why one or two people in your squad are trusted to take penalties.
If I said to you, Mark Noble has got 60 goals in his career, whatever it is, and you're like, oh my God, they're all penalties. It does make a difference. You're like, all right, it was the penalty taker. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but how far do you go with it? Do you go, a penalty goal should count as separate? Well, I'm sorry, but a 2-yard tap is probably easier than a penalty, but they still count, don't they?
I think it just tells you something different about the player, right? It just tells you that it's a different type of goal. It's just a different type of goal. It's like in the NFL, how they differentiate a field goal and a conversion.
Yeah, but
it's a different type of goal.
In football, it's the same. It's the same goal. You get a goal for a 25-yarder. You get a goal for a 2-yard tap in, and you get a goal for a penalty. Like, there's no need to differentiate penalties and non-penalty goals. And I'm not being funny. If you know somebody on the opposite team is good at taking penalties, stop giving away penalties.
Well, there's definitely that. There's definitely that. And we do need. There was no part of me that thought Harry Kane was going to miss that penalty. There was not a single part of me that thought he was going to miss it.
And that is an asset like you want, especially for England as well, because we're not exactly blessed with world-class penalty takers as we showed in the Euros. Like,
that's very true. That's very true.
Having someone like that, and to be fair, he does score plenty of non-penalty goals as well. Like, he is a very good all-round striker. I just find the whole penalty debate irritating, to be honest.
Well, it seems like you're winning, Andy, because Football have just commented, agree with Andy on this. So I feel like you won.
That'd be a good Twitter poll.
Yeah. But there we go. Arsenal get their first big win of the season. Big test. Done. On to the next one. Shit, it's Liverpool. We shall see how we do about that. And Bobby Firmino just scored 2. So he's definitely scoring against us. He scores every time he plays against us. But we need to move on to the other Premier League game. Andy, you ready? No. I'm going to give you some time to collect your thoughts. Adam, did you enjoy this game?
I did. I thought it was an absolutely epic game. I know Andy's cursing me for that, but it was just mesmeric. I mean, even speaking to a Man City friend that went to the match, he was just like blown away by how poor Man United were, just the lack of pressure. And I think what was telling was when you've got a centre-back like Akanji, who is pretty much going to the final third with the ball, that is worrying. Like, where is that midfield? Where is that pressure? I mean, I didn't expect Man United not to kind of show up in that fashion. And I think it tells you a story about Ten Hag, that team. I mean, you thinking like before kickoff, you're thinking, right, he's maybe fixed it, but he hasn't. It's still the same issues again and again and again. It doesn't seem to matter who goes in there. and what players are bought in, it's still back to the same old issues. And Maguire wasn't even playing, so we can't even blame him this time round. So, I mean, it is just shocking.
I've got a mad idea.
Go
I've got
on.
a mad idea for Ten Hag. Why not play Casemiro?
Well, yeah.
What,
Casemiro.
you've got a 5-time Champions League winner that you just spent a lot of money on, and you insist on playing Scott McTominay, from what I can see is just a professional hassler. I don't know what the fuck he does. How does Casemiro not start? Andy, what do you think?
I think to be fair, there has been a change in approach this season as a player selection, because playing somebody because they're what they've done in the past or because they cost X amount of million is part of the reason why Manchester United are where they are at the moment.
But you can't tell me he's not a player that's able to control midfields and sit deep. Like, that's
true.
what he does.
Yeah,
like,
I absolutely get that. And I thought the City game would have been a really good one for him to start. But to be fair, the previous 4 games, McTominay has really upped his levels. He was really good, especially against Liverpool as well. And he was good against Arsenal. I thought, well, okay, he's obviously earned the right to keep his place for that game. I think based on obviously that performance against City, I think there'll be a little bit of a change there, but that's fine. That's how squad selection is supposed to work. You're supposed to come in, earn your place, and I think that culture is slowly coming into effect now. But I think United were rattled in the first 90 seconds when Dalot got that yellow card. I thought it was a harsh yellow.
It was soft. It was soft.
I thought that was a bit soft, and I think, unfortunately, it got to his head. He never recovered after that because he felt that he couldn't go in. And I think it was one of those games where, normally in those kind of games, you could sort of look at 1 or 2 players and go, they're responsible. And unfortunately, with United, it was every single player was collectively responsible. You can't, as much as people on Twitter will have their own agendas, you can't pin that on one particular play. It was bad from back to front. Rashford and Sancho weren't pressing at all. You barely remember they were there. I mean, granted, there was a bit of issue over Rashford's fitness, but so there was issues over everybody else's fitness up front. So the options are somewhat limited there at the moment. And I think they weren't tracking back to help their fullbacks out really at any given point. In defence, they looked woefully out of position every single time. And in midfield, oh my God. Midfield especially was an absolute...
I didn't realise you had a midfield playing.
Well, yeah. Midfield was an absolute shit show. And again, I know it's quite trendy to pick out certain players, but the whole midfield were off it in some really bad way. I mean, Eriksen has been fantastic since he signed for United. Even the games we've not played too well in, he's often been our best attacking player, but he had an absolute shocker. Bruno Fernandes as well. I think he's got this habit of trying to Hollywood balls time in, time out. And although he's got the ability to pull them off, he could do with a bit more simplicity in the game. There was a few times where he could have
retained possession. Possession.
And that's unfortunately what summed up Manchester United. There were a couple of times where they did get the ball, they did win the ball back in midfield, but just wasted possession over and over and over again. It was so frustrating. And I think obviously there were a couple of positives, I suppose. Anthony probably scored a goal of a month.
What a goal. That was one of the great forgotten goals. Like, what a hit that was. What a hit.
But that'll be encouraging because he got his debut goal against Arsenal. I think, without wanting to make it sound like an excuse, I think United's momentum hasn't got stunted a little bit because he had 2 very winnable games, suspended because of cream reasons. Whether they should have been suspended, I guess we've already given our views on that one. But ultimately they were, and they hadn't actually played for nearly 3 weeks, including the international breaks, and maybe there was a bit of ring rustiness. But I think what was disappointing was a manner of performance. There's nothing, apart, obviously you don't want to lose 2 rivals ever, but losing to a team of City's quality isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. And I think, whilst I talk about Man United, you've got to give credit to Manchester City. I mean, De Bruyne and Haaland partnership is really going, and
it's like they've played with each other for 20 years. It's insane.
Haaland is just it's just inevitable, isn't
fair.
it? He's going to break every single record in that Premier League. If he stays at City for 6 or 7 years, he'll have broken all the records by that point because he scored 3 hat-tricks in 8 games.
It took Michael Owen 48 games to get 3
exactly,
hat-tricks.
and yet Michael
mental.
Owen's goal scoring record in the league is still very good. It's still marked as very good, but I think he's setting new standards there now. And if you give him space,
there was a Twitter page called @HLTCO, who's a great follow. He's a Crystal Palace fan, but unbelievable. And he's doing a thing of players that Haaland's just overtaken. He's already scored more goals than I think it was Dimitri Payet did through his entire time in the Premier League. And it's like every game he's just breaking records. I think this is what I would kind of alluded to at the front of the show. I'm going to get your thoughts in a minute, Adam. Like what I alluded to at the front of the show was, no matter how good I think Arsenal could be or are this season, none of it matters because they've got Haaland and then another player scores a hat-trick and nobody gives a shit. Foden gets a hat-trick, but it's not Haaland. You've got 2 players getting a hat-trick in a derby match. Yes, United were terrible, but the standard of City, their performance is just... I don't think the league's honestly seen a team this clinical. This, they've had games at the start of the season where they were giving up. No, they'd have to concede 2 to score 5. But I feel like we're really seeing them hit their stride now. Can any team get even closer than this year?
Unless they have an injury run. That's the only way someone like maybe Arsenal could maybe challenge them at this moment in time.
I do think they're a little bit lighter on numbers in certain positions, I think it's fair to say. I mean, in defence, Ake Adjani, I thought, to be honest, at the start of the game, I thought, we could really... That's
definitely, you can get at them too.
You can get at them too, if that's the backup. And they had quite a lot of youth players on the bench. Obviously, they've let the likes of Sterling and Jesus go without a direct replacement. I think it's they're very much in the... Erling Haaland's just going to score all of our goals, but he did have his injury problems at Dortmund last season. With an absolute clusterfuck of fixtures to come over the next 6 weeks, I think it would be important for Pep to manage his game time.
They're going to have to rest him at some point.
They're going to have to
rest him.
Because he's going to have a rest during the World Cup anyway, because he's not playing. But and I think as much as you could talk about his goals, his assists as well, to be fair, were exceptional. There's a lot more to his game, and I think you just got to hold your hands up and just go, he's too good.
He is to the point now where he is too good, and I think it was I can't remember who said it, but it's people have said it always looks like he's playing against children. Well, this looked like him playing against mediocre children. It was unbelievable.
I'm sat there thinking, going, are we the farmers?
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well I might just want to bring up is I thought Roy Keane's comments on the whole Ronaldo situation was a bit strange. He
always has these moments, though. Roy Keane's
obviously still got a Ronaldo's phone number, put it that way.
The PR team that is out for Ronaldo is an absolute joke. Ferdinand's been out crying about it today as well.
And I just you know what? I just don't get it because ultimately Ten Hag has made it very, very clear that Ronaldo does not fit into his team. Yeah. And I'm not being funny. Like at 4-0 down, why would you bring on a player?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's take away the fact he's Ronaldo. He's still a 37-year-old who've got to manage his minutes at the end of the day. So what's the point in bringing him on in a game that you've already lost? There's no point. There's no benefit to doing it. No. And in these kind of games, if you're chasing a winner at 1-1 or an equaliser at maybe 2-1 down, you bring him on and hope he'll get you something. But I think United have, unfortunately made their beds when it came to that deal because he's on such high wages, no one could afford to buy in.
I just feel like, is it not like, are people just not sick of talking about it now? Every game, regardless of if he plays or if he doesn't play, it's a headline. If I was a United fan, I'd be pulling my hair out at it. Like, can we just talk about the players that are on the pitch and not talk about this guy who clearly doesn't want to fucking be here? Just leave him to it. Just fucking leave him to it. Take the hit. The money's gone. Just leave him. Yeah. I just can't be doing with it anymore.
Even my girlfriend was watching it with me, and he's like, he definitely looks like he doesn't want to be there. It's like, yeah,
And he's got this PR department out. All the players that used to play, I get it. He's your mate. He's the best player. He's one of the best players in history. I get it, but you have to accept that time is a thing and systems are a thing. And the fact that Mika Richards was actually very calmly and well explaining to Roy Keane, but the system and the tactics, he doesn't fit into it. Roy Keane refusing to understand it is just. I found it really frustrating to watch.
I just felt it was unnecessary sideshow. I think,
and we're talking about it again.
It's just. I just thought Roy Keane's comments were annoying. Really, it's just like, well, at the end of the day, like, he's not playing for a reason. Like, it's not Ten Hag's fault that Ronaldo was signed and they can't get rid of him. Personally, I would have just gone, how much do you want to cancel your contract? Pay the money, get him out the building. Because
it's what Arsenal did with Aubameyang. It's what we did with the player. Just, you know what?
You do with Ozil as well. Yeah, like, sometimes I know people probably won't like it, but sometimes it's better to go, you know what? Take your 20 million quid or whatever you're going to earn over next year. Just take that. Fuck off. Find somewhere else to play for the rest of your career. Just get that person out the dressing room. Because
the amount of stick that Arteta and Edu got for releasing Aubameyang on his contract, and now people are looking back going, that's the best thing they fucking did.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have to take that hit. But we can move on. Man City looked terrifying. I also have to quickly shout out Jack Grealish had a very, very, very good game. Yeah. I feel like he's not. People are, because he didn't get a goal or assist, people are just writing him off. He is starting to get better and better.
Like, even the game before the international break, he looked impressive, and I think maybe Pep's giving him a bit more freedom to express himself. He's not, because I think last season he was just turn pass. So and we know his game is not about that. His game is running at players, drawing fouls. I mean, he drew that foul of Dalot, he, from that moment on, he had Dalot's number. And I think that's what he brings to the team. He can commit players, and he is still a very good footballer. It's a bit like Maguire. It's not his fault he cost 100 million quid.
No, exactly.
Someone ultimately decided to pay that for him. That's not his fault. I think last season the criticism was justified, but I think
he's honestly, we're seeing him learn. We're seeing him learn the Pep football now, and I think Pep is being less dictatorial to him.
And let's be honest, he isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. So
that clip of him not recognizing the UK gets me.
He's
so funny. What countries are?
It's obviously going to take him a little bit of time to get used to Pep football. Sometimes it does take players a season. I think
with City, it always does. They always take their players a while.
And if I take my United head off a little bit, certainly I put my England head on. Having him in form is a bonus, because England aren't exactly round with informed players at the moment, especially in midfield. So, I think
it would be exciting to have him in form. I think we're starting to see getting towards the best of Jack Grealish. He just needs that goal. He'll get there in the end. But we're going to run us slightly over, guys. I think we're probably going to go to quarter two, maybe, because we still have a few games to talk about. We do also have Roberto De Zerbi's first game in England, and what a game. We did shout out that Trossard could actually thrive under De Zerbi, and in his first game, he gets a hat-trick. Adam, what did you think of De Zerbi ball at Anfield?
Loved it. Loved every second of it. And it was totally De Zerbi, wasn't it? Because not only did they score goals, they conceded goals, right? So that was the total experience you got from De Zerbi. But one of the things you have to say about the De Zerbi experience was it felt like Brighton had a freedom. Like, unlike they had under Potter, which would have probably been a bit more reserved after you score a goal or two. I think they were properly embracing the freedom. Like, they were doing these kind of pivots. They were moving the ball really nicely. And I think, to be fair, Liverpool fans weren't expecting this. They weren't expecting a performance from Brighton like this. I know a few of my friends were like, De Zerbi, what is he? What am I going to expect? They were even asking me, should I have a Brighton player for my fantasy league? I said, yes. If they're attacking players, you absolutely want them in there. And yeah, Trossard did not disappoint. That was an incredible third goal as well, to be fair, when you thought, right, yeah, Brighton might not win this match now. But yeah, incredible performance. I cannot wait for the next De Zerbi experience. And I loved how even the admin at the Twitter account for Brighton, like they embraced the Italian aspects, you know, saying Forza Brighton and Hove Albion and all of these tweets. It was beautiful. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, enough said about that. Liverpool were shocking as well. It has to be
First
said.
off, they were
Absolutely
terrible. I think I found De Zerbi's comments really interesting because he said, I'm not taking away what Graham Potter's done. He's done an incredible job with this Brighton team. He's done incredible things. I'm just adding a little bit of what I want to do. And I think that's really clever coaching. You've come in and I think there's a lot of coaches that the ego kind of dictates and they go, no, right, I'm tearing it all up. This is how I play. He's seen what is there. An incredible football team doing very, very well and gone, okay, we can do this, defend a bit less. It'll be a bit more fun. Whatever it is he's telling them. But I thought it was an incredible performance. Trossard, what a hat trick. But yes, Liverpool. Klopp said after the game, we didn't know how to prepare for this game because we didn't know what Brighton were going to do. Has Klopp been on the phone to Souness? Does he not know that like you can Google things, you can like research? What did you think of Liverpool? What do you think of Liverpool this season, Andy?
I think they've really yet to get going. You know, I guess I'm also going to have a few biased points of view, but it feels like a few people compared it to the final seasons of when Klopp was at Mainz and Klopp was at towards this time at Dortmund. I think shock horror if you play the same 11 for 4 years running twice a week for 6 years, they're going to be a little bit knackered. It seems that, you know, their solution, you know, the go-to solution is you know, still bringing on James Milner at like 52 years old or whatever old he is, and it feels like expectations and reality seem to be a little bit different for Liverpool fans at the moment. You know, on Twitter, I keep people seeing banging on about Thiago being the best thing since sliced bread, yet he doesn't break out into more of a jog. No. He's still injured quite frequently and still doesn't get in the Spain squad.
You know,
that's
a very fair point.
He's actually not, and he's a rough start to the season. I think not enough is spoken about Darwin Núñez having cost 100 million euros and you know, especially since he got that sending off, he's not really recovered from it since. He's had a very, very poor start. And I think Van Dijk as well, he's another one, you know, people giving him fucking greatest of all time shouts and putting him in their Premier League 11 of all time. But this season, he's had a shocking again against Brighton. He looked positionally suspect. He seems to have lost that decisiveness. Like he's made a couple of mistakes and maybe he's second guessing himself. And again,
I think the team are just psychologically not in a good place. I think like we've talked about a bit of a hangover from last season, how they came so close to winning a lot of things. They played every single game they possibly could. And I think it takes a huge psychological toll to then go again when you've lost the league by goal difference or 1 point, was it? You've lost the Champions League by 1 goal. Like there's a lot to recover there, and I think we're just seeing a psychological hangover that is just.
And I think maybe they haven't had the investment. I think they could have probably invested more than they have done.
Well, that's their FSG are not gonna. They spend what they bring in. That's what they do, and that's how they've got.
I guess they haven't bought in anything. I guess they haven't really bought in any significant amount of money recently. Even Mane went probably quite cheap for the player that he is. To be perfectly honest,
last year of his contract, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, but even so, I thought they would have got a bit more for him, but. Hey ho, and I think obviously, you know, with Trent Alexander-Arnold, I know I'm banging that drum again, but he just basically proved why he doesn't get picked.
He picks his moments, doesn't he? I was just starting to defend him, and then he slipped over for the first goal.
Yeah,
for fuck's sake, Trent.
He just can't defend to save his life.
No.
The sooner someone goes, actually, let's just turn him into a midfielder or something, the better. Because any other system other than a Klopp or maybe Guardiola system, he's not going to do well. And unfortunately, when your attacking output drops off a little bit, people start paying more attention to what you're doing at the other end.
It's exposed more, definitely.
Because he was doing it a couple of seasons ago, but then you look at his output and look what he contributes to the team and go, that's an occupational hazard. But then, Henderson and Fabinho would have the legs to cover him, but they've both had their injury problems and not able to do it as much. And I think that is not being able to give the support network he needs, because let's be honest, if you've got someone of his talents, you do build a team around him, and I feel like the personnel aren't quite able to do it at the moment, and therefore he's probably being exposed more than Klopp would like.
Yeah, it's a team definitely at the end of a cycle. And I think I saw a really, really interesting comparison between Klopp and Wenger. And he said it feels like Wenger era when he was just too loyal to players and refused to move them on when he should and could have improved the team. I feel like Klopp is clinging on to some of these players a little bit too long. Liverpool will be fine. I think it's just going to be a bumpy season for them.
Yeah.
They'll still beat us. They'll still beat us because that's what happens. But I think it was not pretty viewing in the first half, and Brighton were just rampant. It's unbelievable. And I think Brighton, we're going to see them rock up and cause problems everywhere this season. So beautiful to see that. Elsewhere, I think the final game we're going to talk about is, should we do? Oh, actually, I was going to do Fulham Newcastle, but I'm going to talk about Crystal Palace Chelsea, because this decision made my head hot again. Jesus frigging Christ. I love that the Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parish, was like straight on Twitter. Like, fuck this is a disgrace. And he's done it a few times. Adam, justification for that not being a red card?
Blown minds. Like, no idea. Like,
I think there was a little bit.
No.
Go on.
So I think I did hear a really good explanation when I was watching the BBC Sport final score thing. That was it. The explanation that was given, I think, was sort of fair, that the ball was kind of out wide a little bit. All right, it was sort of deliberate handball. You could argue he deserved a red for that. But part of that decision making was it an obvious goal scoring opportunity? That's still debatable because he had quite a long way to go to goal. He was
clean through on goal, though.
But looking at the Chelsea defenders, you could make an argument they would have been able to get back in time.
So then if that's against Bournemouth, you're saying that's not because their defenders are slower? That just feels a bit subjective for me.
That's the whole problem, isn't it, with VAR? It's the whole clear and obvious. I think
for me that is. I think a red card, as it comes,
personally, if it was to me, I'd have been fuming if that was given against my team, and I thought it should have been a red. But I could sort of understand the logic, of perhaps if they chose why that decision was not overturned as an obvious error.
What do you think, Adam?
No, that's clear red card. I'm sure. Sorry, but you're using your hand. If that was in the lower leagues, that's a red card. Simple as. You've stopped an opportunity, regardless. He knew what he was doing. Referee should have been looking at that, reviewing how he did it as well, because it's the manner in which he did it. He knew he wasn't going to get the player, so he went into doing it using his hands. I'm sorry, that's just a clear and obvious red card. No,
and then he sets up the winner, right, which is just an absolute sickener for the Palace fans.
And then for Conor Gallagher of all people to get that winner.
His first goal for Chelsea. Oh god, I'm sorry, Palace fans. It's just horrible to see, but even the Thiago Silva thing, he doesn't even then get a yellow. Even if you're he doesn't even book him. It just blew my mind, that whole thing. But Palace, actually, people are starting to say they might be in trouble. I think they're going to be absolutely fine. They play great football. They've got a great team. They will get there. They've just had a bit of a rough run of form. And there's 2 games now where they should have got results that they did, that they didn't. So I think Palace will be fine. Chelsea, lucky bastards. The final game we're going to talk about is Newcastle beating Fulham 4-1. Miggy Almiron getting 2 goals and an absolutely shocking tackle from Chalobah, and as blatant a red as you're going to see. Newcastle kind of clicking. I know it was against 10 men, but that front line starting to look a bit interesting. Callum Wilson as well getting on the score.
That's the thing with Callum Wilson. It's just he's always been fantastic for Newcastle. He plays 2 or 3 games, gets injured for a few weeks, and so the cycle continues. I would love to see a sustained running games with Wilson, Isak up front, because I think that would be incredible.
And Almiron hitting strikes like that, what a goal!
think
Same Maximin as well. And once he's back, I mean, it'd be incredible, absolutely incredible. But like you say, Grealish said something about Mickey Almiron that's clearly just developed a little bit of fire for him to just get him inspired. And that goal, incredible. But it's interesting, Fulham are deciding to appeal that sending off. I have no idea on what grounds. They did that immediately after the match. So I have no idea why they're doing that, but
that was honestly when it was. I was watching match today, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder what the red card incident is." Then, as I saw him jump, I was like, "Oh, here's the red card incident." Before he'd even made contact, I was like, "Yeah, there it is." Awful tackle from Chalobah. But I can't believe they're trying to repeal that. Anyway, before we leave you, listeners, we need to very, very, very quickly do a Champions League preview. I'm literally just going to tell you which games are on. Inter's week gets even harder as they are hosting Barcelona, who are now top of La Liga for the first time in like 3 years or something crazy. It is mad. Barcelona actually looking good again. Inter definitely not. Liverpool versus Rangers.
Yes,
it's going to be a spicy one.
Big game. Yeah, definitely. Could go either way, but Rangers need a win to stay within a shout. I think it'll be a Liverpool win, though.
I think Liverpool will win it, but Rangers at least need to put in a performance because they have been woeful in the Champions League so far.
It's going to be really weird hearing Scottish people sing the English national anthem and English people booing the English national anthem. It's a nice little like upside down world thing going on there. Elsewhere, we have Celtic going to Leipzig. Chelsea hosting Milan on Wednesday night. That is an interesting one. Are we going to see? I'm going to say Rafa Leao announces himself to people who only watch the Premier League, and he absolutely smashes Chelsea to bits. What do we think for this game? I'm really excited about this game.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot wait for him to come off that left-hand side and just belt one from distance. You can see it just happening. And then, it's just going to shock a lot of people, including Bowley, who will just go and like make a bid for him, knowing him, because he's already got Nkunku. So, why not
in the middle of that? They're doing a medical a year before he can move. It's absolutely baffling.
Weird.
Absolutely baffling. Then elsewhere, we have Juventus hosting Maccabi Haifa, Real Madrid hosting Shakhtar Donetsk. That happens every year in the Champions League at this point. Sevilla playing Dortmund, Benfica, PSG, and Man City playing Copenhagen. Some pretty exciting games. I've skipped a few as well. Bayern, Victoria Pilsen, Ajax, Napoli. That's another game we want to talk about. What do we think of this game? I think that feels like a real football romantics fixture. Ajax versus Napoli.
Yeah, can't wait for the total football from both sides in this respect. So, it should be a fascinating matchup there.
And then finally, the tournament where all the cool kids hang out, the Europa League. Let's look at the big games. Sheriff Tiraspol against Real Sociedad. United go all the way to Cyprus for Omonia to take on Neil Lennon's Omonia, right? If he's still there. I'm pretty sure he's still the manager there.
Yeah, he's still there.
Midtjylland taking on Feyenoord. Who are Arsenal playing? Oh, Arsenal are travelling to the Arctic Circle to take on Bodo Glimt. They, of course, battered Roma in the Europa League last year, or the Conference League. I hope they don't have a repeat performance, but playing in the Arctic Circle does feel a bit like a trial. It feels like a trap that we could fall into. But we shall see. Guys, I think we are finished. That's covered everything. So much football to cover at the minute. October is jam-packed with football. I don't know how we're actually going to talk about it all. But guys, anything to say before I say farewell to our listeners and viewers?
It's been great. It's just a shame we couldn't cover it all in detail, right?
We'll cover that on Thursday. It'll be fine. There's a few sackings to tell you about. And
oh God, we didn't even get there, did we?
There'll probably be one or two more, especially looking at the tonight's game, Leicester and Nottingham Forest.
Hassan Hutul as well. The word
I'll speak to a Southampton man. He's not too happy.
They are pretty sick of him, aren't they? They are.
Yeah, so maybe by Thursday we'll have another sacking to be chatting about. So
that'll be fun. Sacking season is in full swing. Right, listeners, viewers, we're going to let you go. Thank you as always for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit like. Do all them things, and we will see you on Friday. Bye, guys.
See you guys.